Our viewers will have heard ministers also say, as you have done this morning, say repeatedly that you have to follow the recommendations of the pay review bodies. How many times has the government ignored their recommendations this year?
Well, I think if you look across the piece for all the public pay review body recommendations, I think if you take sort of 20 or 30 of the past few years, I think there's only been about 3 or 4 occasions when we haven't been able to follow that, and that's been an exceptional circumstance.
Well, there have been 4 this year alone, actually. 4 times when the government has ignored the pay review bodies, who everybody says are independent and they have a job to do. So if you've already ignored them 4 times this year, why can't you ignore them on the nurses' strike?
For precisely the reasons that I've set out to you, that we want to take the politics out of this. We have an independent process and we should adhere to that. And by the way, it's not just us saying it. Labour's Shadow Chancellor was saying in the summer that we should adhere to it. If we don't have this kind of independent framework, we've got no basis for ensuring that we do this in a fair way across the board.
But why was it okay?
This is all about making sure we have a fair, straightforward way of doing this to meet the needs of nurses and other public sector workers whilst balancing the risks of public finances.
But why was it okay then to ignore those recommendations when it came to prison service pay or senior civil servant pay or judges' pay? Or as Jeremy Hunt, who's now the Chancellor, tried to ignore the recommendations back in 2014. Why was it okay to ignore them then and it wouldn't be okay to ignore them now?
Well, I think in those specific circumstances that there was acute pressure on public finances at the time.
No, well, prison service, civil servants, judges,
Laura,
that's this year.
If you give me a moment to answer this question. The public sector pay review bodies have looked at the level of inflation, by the way, the expected level of inflation. They've looked at the pressure on the lowest paid workers. That's why, for example, they've given 9%. So actually, by following that, that is ensuring that nurses will get a significantly higher level of pay settlement than they have done previously. And actually, by following the pay review body recommendations, we're giving some of the highest pay settlements for 20 years now. Of course, I know everyone across the public and private sector is struggling at the moment with the consequence of the war in Ukraine, with COVID, as we recover from COVID.